Hello, I'm Nick.
And I'm Helena, and we both work at the MS Trust, a charity for people affected by MS in the UK. Our job is to help you make sense of MS.
Yeah, and welcome to our podcast, Multiple Sclerosis, Breaking It Down. Anyone who's new to listening to us, hello, and hello to everyone who listens to us every month as well. It's great to have you on board with us. Today, we're going to be focusing on mobility aids and getting to grips with using a mobility aid specifically. So this will be the episode for you if maybe a health professional has told you to start consider using something like a walking stick or a wheelchair, but you just don't quite feel like you're ready for it yet. Maybe you're noticing changes to your walking and you're wondering what you can do about it. So in this episode, we're going to talk to neurophysio Laura, who's from Neuro Heroes, and she's going to talk to us about aids and why they're helpful and why they can really enable you to do more things, and also some ideas about how to shift your perspective so that you can get to grips with using one.
And speaking of shifting your perspective, I also spoke to Hayley, who's also known as My Sassability if you're on Instagram or TikTok, who's a fantastic lady that we started following her a while back, and we've been sort of really wanting to do stuff with her since then because we just thought she's great. She talks a lot about her MS journey and how she got to terms with having to start to use walking aids. But before we start, if you want to learn more about mobility problems in MS, we've actually already done 2 podcast episodes on the topic, and they're linked to in the show notes. So be sure to check those out.
Yeah, you're saying about Hayley, Helena. I know she's a really big character, isn't she? So yeah, as you say, we were both really looking forward to having her on board, weren't we? So
yeah,
she's amazing, isn't she?
Well, we actually interviewed her as a video first, and then after we'd done that, we were like, she needs to be on the podcast as well because she's just amazing. we love her.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of information as well about mobility aids, walking difficulties, of course, you can head to our website. That's www.mstrust.org.uk. We'll talk a little bit more about exactly what you can find there later on. But as we say, we've got 2 great interviews, 2 amazing guests who are really lucky to have this time. So let's get into it. So first, we're actually going to head over to Helena's chat with Hayley. So let's see what My Sassability has got to say about mobility aids and mobility.
Today, I am here to have a little chat with someone that we've found on Instagram. I know she's also on TikTok, and it's the absolutely fabulous My Sassability, Hayley. Hi, Hayley.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Could you, for people who don't know who you are, could you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Hayley. Yes, my handle on Instagram and on TikTok is My Sassability. I call myself Hayley Sassability. Purely because I just want to get the word sassability out there, because I have a disability, which you all know is multiple sclerosis, but I've turned it to sass, and my sass shines through over my disability. And I'm a 36-year-old mum of 1, and I've had multiple sclerosis for 23 years this year.
Were you diagnosed really young then?
Yes, I was diagnosed at the age of 13. Well, I started getting ill at the age of 13, and then it was kind of just after my 14th birthday, I was then actually officially diagnosed with rapidly evolving, severe relapse remitting MS.
That's a mouthful, that one.
Yeah, but it's just MS. It's MS. Whatever you call it, it's MS. So yeah,
this is true. So how was that? I mean, obviously that must have been super hard. When you're a teenager, you go through with so much stuff anyway, hormones and school and whatnot. I mean, how was that?
It was incredibly challenging, but it was very rapid. I literally woke up with severe pins and needles in my feet, and these pins and needles just didn't go away. And I went to school and carried on my daily life. And anyway, within the space of a couple of days, they travelled up my legs, and they travelled up so far. Within a week, I was then admitted into intensive care because I was paralysed basically from the neck down, and my lungs had stopped working. So I lost function of everything, and it was all in one go. So I was being assisted to breathe in intensive care, and then I spent a solid 4 months in hospital. Obviously, the teams were trying to establish what was going wrong, and at first my diagnosis was transverse myelitis. But I relapsed again, and through the lung functions and MRI scans, they could see it was a very rapidly evolving, quick succession of multiple sclerosis that was happening to me. And yes, I was a teenager, but I just didn't know what was going on. I was in hospital, and all I wanted to do was be well and get out of there, but not knowing what was ahead of me.
No, I mean, once they've sort of said it was MS, what support did you get? Did they start you on any treatment because you were so young?
I was on, all I remember from the time, I just was pumped up with steroids as far as I could know. Actually, in hospital, I put on a lot of weight, but obviously that's steroid weight and everything else. And the support I got, I didn't back then. That was in year 2000. So as much as I remember, it was mainly my mum and my family that were my support network. I didn't feel, other than obviously the doctors and nurses, I didn't know there was other networks out there that could support me. We were just trying to get myself well, and my focus then was just to learn to walk again. But I didn't know whether I was going to be able to walk again. I thought then my life was just going to be just a wheelchair user from then on. And obviously everything that came with that, my family were upset, I was upset, everybody was upset. But as a teenager, weirdly, all I wanted to do was get back to school and literally just walk again. And I felt I could walk again. I felt, no, hang on a minute, I need to start doing, and things started coming back, and they did, and things started to get back to a normal, and I learned to walk again. Went back to school and then carried on my life, but then relapsed again quite quickly within that year. And then the official diagnosis was the multiple sclerosis.
Did you manage to get back to school eventually then, or
yes.
Yeah?
So I did. I got back to school. I got myself out of the wheelchair, and I went to school on crutches, and I just continued on crutches for as long as possible, and then eventually weaned myself off crutches. I was back walking again. So I did. I felt like I was just going to be normal, but I think looking back then, it was kind of like, oh well, that's done with now. You know, I just need to focus on school. So in a way, when you've got that naivety as a teenager, you just carry on, don't you? And then when problems started again, as in optic neuritis, waking up not being able to see out of my left eye, and the fatigue was getting to me when I was at school, and then the cramps, and I say kind of semi-paralysis again, because it wasn't full-on paralysis. It was like semi, I couldn't really get my legs to function properly, but they were functioning. I just dealt with them as and when. And then my MS nurses, they were quite good, as and when I did have a problem, it was like, right, we need to go and get you steroids again. You need to come in. We need to do intravenous methylprednisolone and all that crack. So, I was walking again, but just dealing with problems along the way.
Yeah. What was it like being in school at the time? I mean, what were the kids like? We know kids can be not always the kindest to each other, but...
No. See, I suffered with bullying throughout school anyway. Even before I got ill, I was bullied quite a bit, actually. And then when I went back to school, it kind of, when they could see I was on crutches and what have you, things didn't really, nothing I felt like was said or anything. But then when I looked normal again, yeah, my bullies just came back at me, and but that wasn't because of my condition or anything. It was just because of me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was bullied all through high school, which wasn't pleasant, but hey ho, you just have to get on and deal with it, don't you? And I managed to deal with it on top of MS. I don't know. I didn't enjoy high school very much. I just couldn't wait to leave.
And once you were out of school, how did sort of life and MS move on then?
So it moved on. I went to college for a few months, but I wanted to work. So I just got out into the working world and started to work. And then each thing as a normal teenager, you progress and aim towards. So like learning to drive a car and, saving up for, well, going out at the weekend and stuff like that. So MS in retrospect didn't bother me as much sort of back then. I felt like I could do anything. I felt I was back to normal again, and it kind of let me build up my strength again. I remember feeling tired and the exhaustion, but I just kept going. Like, I don't know whether it was adrenaline or just going out with my friends or what, but I did keep going. But I did have my relapses up until the age of 22-ish roughly, and I was then on different DMTs. So I started on Rebif, the self-injections, and then Copaxone self-injections, and I was doing all this, but still I was getting relapses. Things were still not sort of slowing down. So it was a turbulent time with regard to my health, but I did just try and carry on the best way I could, and yet using crutches now and again when I needed to. But then when I was poorly, I would just stay in the house. Like I couldn't feel like I could actually get out and about, so I suppose back then I would probably lock myself away a bit more if I was not feeling particularly great. Not because I was well, I think my mum, because I remember my mum saying, like, even when she wanted to take photos or whatever with family events or anything like that, she never really wanted. I always used to say I never really wanted any pictures of me in my wheelchair. So I actually have no pictures of me sort of back then using mobility aids or my wheelchair or anything.
Yeah,
because I suppose the stigma was more back then. So yeah, and maybe it's still now. Whereas now I've turned it on its head. It's like I'm just like I need this stuff. So if you want to see me out and about, and if you want to be my friend and we want to go out, then I have to bring all this stuff with me. So,
what do you think made that change from sort of really not wanting to go out and show that you having to use mobility aids to like really doing what you're doing on social media now?
Well, when I started Tysabri, that was a brilliant infusion for me. It really was, because when I started that, I now know, knowing how I've been the past year or so, I now know how much Tysabri protected me in both relapse rate and also actually my symptoms. I always used to think that Tysabri didn't protect me from symptoms, because I still had bits of things going on, it was like the fatigue or what have you, but my mobility was far better. You'd look at me and you wouldn't even think there was a thing wrong with me. And that's what MS can be like for a lot of people. And that's how it was for me. I had a disability, but I didn't think I had a disability. And yet I looked so normal. It's invisible. So I did, in all honesty, carry on my life as best way I could over the past like 14 years. But when I was unwell or when I was fatigued or tired, I still did lock myself away because I couldn't get out. And where I live as well, I live out in the countryside here, and I've been here for a good 12 years. So it's more difficult actually to get out and about places and driving and stuff. So if I needed to get to the shops, it's, a 6-mile drive and stuff. So if I'm unwell and my legs are not feeling great, I won't drive. So then I keep myself in. But now it's changed, and it's changed dramatically in the past year, because when I had my relapse last year, My right side is a lot worse now. My speech has gone a bit funny, and my fatigue levels have actually shot through the roof. I can't believe how much I've changed, but I've changed EMTs as well. And maybe that's got a bit of a change. I had a bit of an effect on me. And because of my personality and the way I am, I just thought, no, I refuse to stay in. I will get my wheelchair back out, and I will get all my, I had minging crutches and I was using them, but I was using mainly the wheelchair through my last relapse. And my mum flew over because they live in Manchester and I actually live in Northern Ireland. So my mum flew over to help me. And everybody around me was trying to help me as well, just get out. And I got my wheelchair, and it was a bog standard, not very aesthetically pleasing, heavy, cumbersome wheelchair. And I decided to make it look as pretty as I possibly could. And I upcycled it and put glitter all over the bits that I could get glitter onto, changed the cushions and make it look really glamorous. Because I thought, no, I still want to remain me, and I still want to, look nice, look good. So for me, I thought, well, I'm using this chair and I'm making it look pretty. So I need this chair and I'm using it. So yeah, for me now that has totally changed, because it's why should I have to stay in the house? Why should I have to lock myself away? Why should I? On the days I feel great or better, then I'll use my chair. I'll get out there and just enjoy life. I do have an electric chair as well, because I suffer with weakness in my right arm quite a bit as well. So when I'm using my wheelchair, it can cause problems with my right arm. So I have an electric one as well, and that's amazing. Or just use a mobility scooter. It just takes pressure off me. And then my crutches and my walking sticks, they're glamorous too. So I've got leopard print crutches and I've got a sparkly black walking stick. So mobility aids are now just my accessories. I just see them as my accessories now.
So that, do you think actually thinking of it like that helps a bit?
Oh, totally. I've actually chosen my next wheelchair, my new wheelchair, which is it's still delayed, but my next wheelchair is gonna be a lightweight fixed frame one, so I can get it easier in and out of my car and what have you. And I was so conscious about what colour I chose, because I kept thinking, I don't want it to clash with my outfits.
Love it.
Because I was going to go for a pink one. And I was like, no, but if I've got a pink one and I want to wear, certain different colours, that's just going to clash. So
somebody needs to invent like a colour changing, so you could just like push a button and then it would go,
so
colour.
I've gone just for more of a plainer wheelchair, but the decision on it was because I didn't want it to clash with certain outfits, and I want also as many different coloured pairs of crutches and walking sticks as I possibly can, because with MS, we all know, well, for me, my MS is very dynamic. It's very much all over the place. Yes, I use my wheelchair daily, out and about and doing shopping and stuff. I will use my wheelchair because it saves my leg. If I overwork my leg, as so walking or trying to get up and down the stairs and stuff, it goes dead. It just stops. You do feel like a switch has just been set off, and I want to stay on my feet for as long as possible. But my body can't do what I want it to do. And so therefore, I've accepted the fact that, okay, I will just sit down, give myself a break, and continue my life using a wheelchair or my crutches or my stick. I will use what I need on the day, basically.
Let's have a little chat about your social media, because you're very active on social media. That's how we found you. What messages are you trying to sort of get out on social media?
Well, one is to educate a little bit more about MS. Two is because I use mobility aids and because I am a wheelchair user, I very much am very vocal about trying to change perceptions of how people are viewed when you have a disability. So for me, it's a case of I will still remain me as much as possible using my mobility aids. But the other thing is that I found that I'm also quite vocal about is access into places. So for me, when I put out posts that do say if we are not seen, we are not heard. For me, that meaning is if I'm not seen out in society using my wheelchair, then people like myself, my needs won't be met. My need to access a shop, my need to freely, maneuver myself around up and down streets and high streets and whatnot, they're not going to be heard. So I think the more of us that are wheelchair users and that are mobility aid users, the more we just go out and enjoy life as best we can, the more our voices will be heard with regard to access into a lot of places. And for me as well, the way the world is media plays a massive part in that. It's massive. We see hundreds of images on the internet and on the TV, and I want to be represented. So all is swings and roundabouts. If you don't see me, you won't know that there's a need for me to be represented, whether that be clothing, mainly clothing, the way you look, your appearance, just actors, actresses on the TV. Why is there not more on the TV? So for me, it's a whole big bubble of see me, look at me, see what I need to enjoy my life in society, but also represent me.
I think that's so important. We spoke a little bit before I pressed record on sort of this whole thing about being seen out and about with a wheelchair. Because when I was little, my granddad, he also had MS, and he was in a wheelchair. So I grew up with thinking that wheelchair, that was great, because that meant my granddad would come with me out, and I would get up on a little like an office chair. We would have races. It was, for me, it was just like, that was the cool granddad because he had wheels. It was awesome.
This is it.
And I think
kids think it's great.
Yeah.
And she said when she grows up, she wants a blue wheelchair, and as much as I know within your heart and within us, we want to all be able-bodied people.
Yeah.
I would like wheelchairs to not be seen as a negative thing.
Yeah.
You're only going to cause yourself more harm to your mental state and your body if you refuse to use something that will help you go out and enjoy life.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful, the likes of, Mattel that have brought out the wheelchair Barbies and people that look different, because we don't all look the same. That's humans. We don't all look the same. So I think it's wonderful that you've grown up with your grandfather who, used a wheelchair, and it was normal for you, and it was just normal. And so my daughter will grow up with, oh, well, my mummy uses a wheelchair and she doesn't think anything about it. It's not like a big thing. Whereas other children, they're all inquisitive. And when I'm out and about, and especially if I'm in my electric wheelchair, like that's an amazing thing for them to see.
Yeah.
They look and they, I've heard little children go, Mummy, what's that? What's that over there? Or, oh, Mummy, look at her. Or, they're inquisitive. They want to know. And I mean, I don't mind if a little child comes up to me and wants to know about it and stuff. I'll tell them, my leg doesn't particularly work well or whatever like that. So, if we see more of it, maybe it just becomes more normal. I was recently in Florida, and the accessibility over there and how they are with disability is amazing. I know it's a notorious attraction, and I know obviously it's lots and lots of people and lots of majority of the community altogether. But the amount of wheelchair users that I saw, the more I saw it, the more I thought, God, I feel just so normal. I don't feel like anyone's staring at me. I don't feel like anybody's thinking I'm weird or anything like that. It just normal. And I would like to see that here. You know, the more I see it, the better I will also feel. And for my own mental state to be thinking, well, do you know what? You're just getting on with your life and I'm just getting on with mine.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
Do you feel like the last few years, though, like you were saying about Barbie bringing out things, and we see a little bit more, we're still not masses in the media, but that it has actually gotten better?
Yes, I do. I do think it has got better. There's more things that are being seen on the TV. I recently appeared on a TV show myself.
Yes, tell us about that.
That was a crazy thing that happened. So yeah, I appeared on Anson Deck's Saturday Night Takeaway, and that was a bit of a random 5 minutes of fame. But I'm a wheelchair user, and I was on a show, and it's on TV.
Yeah.
So it's lovely to see that this, you know, we are actually being included in things, and it's that thing, it's inclusion, the fact that we still need to be included in society. So yeah, again, it's like, if I am not seen, I am not heard. So hello.
And it got quite a lot of media coverage as well. I've seen some articles about you.
Been a few in my local area. I'm from Manchester, but I live in Fermanagh, which is Northern Ireland, and Enniskillen. So yeah, a few media platforms picked up on it. So yeah, it was brilliant, and it was wonderful, and such an incredible experience. But there you go. You know, there's a wheelchair user on TV, you know, and just for other wheelchair users to see it, I'm sure it's comforting to see. And I am seeing a bit more going on the TV, and there's more in the clothing industry that I can see. So it just needs to keep going. It needs to not be a token. It needs to be, you know, so in the past, I've always felt it's always been a bit of a token gesture.
Yeah.
And that was even before I've been using my wheelchair more. I've always been conscious about it, because obviously the type of a disability we have, we're very conscious of, you know, your legs not working properly and what you're going to need to get around and stuff like that. But yeah, I've always thought, oh, disabilities always seems to be like a token gesture somewhere. Well, no, I don't want to be a token gesture. I want to be a member of society that is listened to, heard, and seen. So get yourselves out there. If you use a mobility aid and you're not giving in, I always say this, you are not giving in to multiple sclerosis. You are not. You can fight and fight and fight and fight. And I still fight and fight and fight. But I have a condition that's not yet cured. So therefore, I'm just actually hurting my mental state if I refuse to do the things that, or if I refuse to use the things that will get me out and enjoy life.
Yeah. I remember a few years back, I interviewed a chap who was saying he used to look at his wheelchair and almost growl at it. And then when he actually finally realized that this wasn't his enemy, it was actually a friend that would sort of get him out of the house and get him doing things. I remember he used to take his daughter to dance training, and they would have like a little boogie while he was in the wheelchair and she was dancing. And she just wanted to go out with her dad, you know, she just wanted to do stuff. But it was just that kind of overcoming the fact that this was not the enemy, it was actually an aid to help him. Do you have any sort of tips on how to make that shift? Because you said that you felt that way before as well.
I did, yeah, because, you know, like I say, everybody wants to be an able-bodied person, but if you're struck down with a condition such as ours or anything similar, then I feel for you to be happy within yourself, you need to be able to learn to adapt to a new way of living and a new way of life. So for me, my tips really are accessorize your mobility aids to your outfits. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. You know, just try it. I'm not saying that the world is so easily accessible, because that's the crux here. Again, if I'm not seen out in my wheelchair, then establishments are not going to change, but they need to change, because you need to see me.
Yeah.
So let's get out there. Let's save our bodies, prolong your happiness in this life, and use whatever aid you need on that day. That's mainly how I look at it, because I don't want to sit inside, and I don't want to mope, and I have suffered with depression, and I don't want to go down that road. Yes, things are challenging, and things are not always rosy all the time for me. Yeah. They're not, you know, I do struggle with inaccessibility of places, but I'm making the effort, and my daughter is enjoying her life because I'm doing my best. And again, for me, my motivation is my daughter as well, because I think I still want to be her mum. I still want to be the fun mum. I still want to get out. I still want to get to the park and stuff. So for me, those mobility aids come along. And actually, she likes the fact that I've got a wheelchair, because all around Florida, as I was being wheeled around all the parks and everything, where was she? She was sat on my knee, because her legs were aching as well. So there you go. I have my uses.
With all the sort of social media and everything that you've been doing, and it seems like there's been quite a lot of positive things, but has there been any negative comments?
The majority is a lot of love, in fairness, yes, but I have had negative comments about the fact that I'm a wheelchair user, and the way that I look, and the two have gone hand in hand, because there was a colleague of my mother's who she used to work with last year, and I had gone for a tanning modelling shoot, advertising false tan. You know, I'm a false tan user, but I'm also a wheelchair user. So they were advertising me using the tan with my wheelchair, and my mum had told her work colleague about this, and this particular work colleague could not quite believe, and was shocked and amazed about the fact that I was using fake tan and doing modelling. And she turned around and said to my mum, "What does she want to use false tan for? She's in a wheelchair." And then very, very, very quickly retracted the comment, because my mum was so upset, and had basically not so much questioned, but she then questioned her. But she knew, this work colleague knew what she had said was so offensive, actually, and so derogatory. Why wouldn't I want to wear false tan? Why wouldn't I want to make myself look nice? Yes, I'm a wheelchair user, but that shouldn't even come into it.
No.
I'm a woman that likes to look nice.
Yeah.
So why not?
You are in a wheelchair, but you have legs, and if you want to put tan on those legs, then what's that?
If I want to make them look nice, I'll make them look nice. And actually, I think I've got quite nice legs. It's just one of them doesn't work. Well, one of them doesn't work properly. Let's just say that. So yes, why wouldn't I want to put nice false tan on this body of mine that I still love, that I still am alive and existing? Why wouldn't I? It amazes me. Perceptions amaze me. You know, comments. I know people mean well, but I've had comments in the past of, "Oh, it's lovely to see you out. Well done. You know, it's great you're out." I'm like, I'm just like, yes, I'm out. Yes, I'm out. Yeah. Yes, thanks. You know, being praised for doing my daily tasks is a bit weird, but thanks. But people mean well.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird sometimes.
That makes sense. I've seen quite a lot of people who use wheelchairs to sort of talking about how people talk to them. I know we had a story before about a carer who said when he took his wife out, he always sort of used to make a point of standing in a certain way, so they would have to look at both of them, because otherwise they were just looking at him and not talking to his wife.
A wheelchair doesn't make me inaudible, and it doesn't make me unable to hear.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'm still a human, just sat down.
Yeah.
And we all sit down.
Yeah. Yeah, you wouldn't talk to somebody different just because they were sitting down, would you? So
it's just my chair. Remember, it's just a chair with wheels on.
Yeah,
that's it. That's all it is.
Well, you were saying about modeling, though, I think there's been a lot of companies that actually do try to do much more diverse models now. I mean, it's growing up in the 90s where pretty much all models looked very much the same. It was very the same size. They look, you know, I feel like now when you look at things like, I don't know, you go and look at a sports website or anything like that, that there isn't just like the one look for people. So I feel like
there is more. Yeah. There is, it's starting to change. But I think there needs to be far more. I don't know. You can always push it a little bit more because I think it's only just starting, really.
Early days.
And it'd be nice to see more representation of every single body shape, form, type, you know, ability. It really is, because then that is my point. If I'm not seen, we're not heard. So we have to see everybody. Let's see everybody. We're not just one type of person. And that's how I am, you know. That's me, and I've done a little bit of modeling, and let's see if things can change, you know, for others out there, and to feel represented, because I want to feel it.
During MS Awareness Week, we're going to be talking a bit about sort of mental health and MS. And we did a recent big survey at the MS Trust where it was revealed that about 76% of the people who responded that changes to their mobility and walking had affected their mental health. Like for you, when you're out and about, I mean, does that make you feel happier? Seems a little bit silly to say, but how does it sort of affect your mental health?
When I'm out, gosh, it's amazing. I know we shouldn't use the word normal, because what's normal? But I feel me. I feel like Hayley. I feel great. I love socializing. I love getting out and about. I don't do it every single day. Some days you do want to just be at home and enjoy your own space and what have you. But I feel lighter and I feel happier being out, because being out and socializing with people releases all those happy endorphins. Locking yourself away is never a good idea, and I did do that in the past, and my mental health did suffer because of it. I really struggled. I really struggled a lot with my mobility. I was frustrated with my body. I was frustrated at the fact that my leg gave up on me, that my balance kept going, that my fatigue just wouldn't let me mobilize myself. And then I just thought, you know what? Why am I putting myself through this? Why am I cutting my own happiness short by not going out? So being out and about really does help your mental health.
Did you, when you were struggling and sort of were still staying inside, did you ever reach out to anyone and sort of say, look, I'm struggling?
Well, I had a bit of a breakdown. So I kind of all got to a head, but it wasn't, if I'm honest, it wasn't just the fact that it was my mobility. It was a lot of other health issues that were going on that kind of got me. And family were my biggest support, and my friends were my biggest support. I let it build up to a fact of, you know, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I know I'm fine. And then it just hit me. I'm like, no, I'm not fine, actually, no. And I just let it all out, and I cried, and I just told everybody like it is. And for me, telling my family, look, I'm struggling here with my mobility. Please, not that they were, but in my own head, I feel like members of my family were still expecting me to carry on like I was a few years ago. You know, they oh, you know, Hayley, oh, you know, I don't want you being in a wheelchair, and I don't want to see you in a wheelchair. I'm like, no, but, and this is like my grandma, you know, it's like, no, but grandma, my wheelchair helps me, and everybody needs to understand this around me. So for me, that moment in time was, okay, stop being down about it. Let everybody know. Tell it like it is. Let everybody see that how upset and down I've been. And everybody now needs to see me, Hayley, as a mobility aid user now, and carry on.
Is there anything, do you think, that we as MS organizations now, speaking of, because we're kind of trying to work together during MS Awareness Week, is there anything that we can do to sort of try to I don't want to say, because you already said, let's not use the word normalize, but, you know, is there anything that we can help out with, do you think, to make this less of a stigma?
That's a hard question because, I don't know. Because these are all doing a great job anyway. You know, you all release, you know, things in the media, you do things like this, so chatting to MS sufferers. You put me on the spot there.
That's all right. Well, it's good if we're doing a good job.
I think you are all doing a good job. You're reaching out to everybody in the community. The fact that you connected with me via social media, and social media is so powerful, you know, everything, information, everything out there is brilliant. So keep doing that, you know, keep putting blogs out, keep putting posts out, and represent everybody with multiple sclerosis in every shape and form. I think that's important for me, because the thing that I actually get caught up about, and I do get a bit upset about, is, as much as it's brilliant, and I am not going to take this away from anybody that has multiple sclerosis, because you are doing the best you can do. But for me, sometimes when I see too much of the, oh, look what I've run today, you know, I've run 10K, or I've gone up this mountain, or, you know, I'm doing this, that marathon, this, that, and the other. For me, sometimes as a wheelchair user, and the way my condition affects me, that can really make me so upset, because I beat myself up and, you know, thinking, why can't I do that?
Yeah.
You know, so representing all the shapes and forms of multiple sclerosis across the board, I think will help a good number of people. And it's not to be negative, to show, you know, somebody that is a wheelchair user, because I know there's people that are worse than me, you know, and that can sometimes upset me. But then I still remember, that's your MS and I know my MS. So I know what I need and you know what you need. So representing everybody, again, it's this representation again. It's showing it in all of its dynamic forms. I think the best thing.
I think it's so important. I mean, we've been talking so much to a lot of people recently about representation, because it was very much like, well, when I was diagnosed, the only person I knew with MS was my granddad. So I sort of thought it was an older person's condition, you know, and here you were diagnosed when you're a teenager. Yeah. So, I mean, it's all, and then predominantly before we saw white people, but we know that, you know, it could happen to anyone. They say that MS doesn't discriminate, and it's true, really, isn't it?
It absolutely is. So that, it's representation in all shapes and forms of the condition for me. I like to see a good range.
When I was first diagnosed, I think I was sort of given that sort of, you know, calm me down session from, I don't know if it was the neurologist or a nurse, where they were sort of giving me some stats about where, you know, only so few people end up in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I think we've moved away from saying that now more and more, but I still see it being bandied around. How does that actually make you feel when you see or hear that sort of stat?
It makes me feel a bit sad, because it's seen as a real negative thing, and a wheelchair is seen as a real negative thing. It does make me sad, because I think when I was diagnosed as well, my mum was so upset, because she did see the wheelchair and then that was it. It was, oh my God, you know, you're never going to walk again. But I showed everybody wrong, and I did, because this condition is so unpredictable. Yeah. And it's so strange. You never know what could happen with it. So, you know, I proved them wrong. But now if somebody says, oh, you know, you're in a wheelchair, and I'm like, yeah, I am, but I can stand up, and I can still technically walk, but I cannot walk far, and I might just fall over. So yes, I am sat in a wheelchair, but I can sit on that sofa if you'd like me to. I'll just transfer myself over. Mobility aids are that, it's being mobile. Yeah. You know, I know, you know, we know wheelchairs are used for many different reasons. Well, they should be seen, see, that's what it should be seen as being used for many different reasons. I know there is a lot that are unfortunate that, you know, they are unable to move their legs and cannot stand up, and so therefore, you know, they use their wheelchair far more, what have you. But I would just like it to be seen as not just that one form, if that makes sense. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody. I really don't when I say that. But a wheelchair user is precisely that. They use a wheelchair to get around, and I can use my wheelchair, but I can also use my crutches. I can get out of it. My wheelchair are my legs when my legs don't cooperate.
My final question, because I love the name of your account, and clearly I feel like we can all do with a bit more sass in our life.
Oh, yeah.
Have you got any tips just about like how can we all get a bit more sassy?
Pip up your wheelchair for a start. Get your mobility aid sorted first. And for me, I used to be a beauty therapist. So throughout my working life, I was a beauty therapist. I'm all about trying to keep yourself looking well and healthy and etc. And sassiness to me is being happy with who you are and celebrating your body in all shapes and forms. And I know I don't want it to be vain, but I do my hair, I do my makeup, my lashes, my nails, my tan. All this stuff helps me to feel sassy. Like, as a woman, that's all I want. I want to feel a bit. I want to feel sexy. I want to feel feminine. I want to feel all those things.
Yeah.
So for anybody that wants to get more sass in your life, look in the mirror, think to yourself, I love me, I love who I am, and wear what you want to wear, get out there and enjoy life and be a queen or a
king. Love it.
Yeah, that's it. It's just making the most of what you can on the day, and wear whatever you want to wear that makes you feel happy. It's all about happiness. All that we want to be is happy. So if you want to wear crazy colours, go wear crazy colours. If you want to, you know, that's sassy. That's being sassy. That's owning who you are.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for talking to me today. This has been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Lovely. Thanks, Helena. No, it's been lovely for me. I always enjoy talking.
Now, if this was a commercial podcast, here's where there would be an advert. But as we're a charity, we don't do that. So instead, we'd like to take the opportunity to tell you all about our fantastic resources for people with MS.
Yeah, that's right, Helena. Our website, mstrust.org.uk, has loads of information and resources for anyone affected by MS. That does include people caring for people with MS, people who live with MS, people who are part of a family where someone lives with MS. So do head to our website. There'll be something for you there. And specifically, the best place to go is our A to Z of MS. So there we have lots of entries on loads of different topics for people affected by MS, but also specifically for mobility problems as well, walking problems, any related symptoms such as, you know, things like foot drop or spasticity, to name a few. So do have a look on there. You can go to mstrust.org.uk and find that A to Z, or you can do /A to Z /walking difficulties.
And now over to Nick and neuro physio Laura Douglas.
Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're joined by Laura Douglas from Neuro Heroes. Hi Laura, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks Nick. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, it's an absolute pleasure. For anyone listening, I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself and tell us about your background a little bit.
Sure, so I'm Laura. I'm a neurophysiotherapist. I have been for around 13 years. I have worked just purely in neurology for quite a long time now. And in that, I see lots of people with different neurological conditions, but I've specialised in MS over the latter part of my career. And I now run Neuro Heroes, which is an organisation where we put on exercise classes specifically for people with neurological conditions, and quite a lot of our classes are for specifically for people with MS, and we do them all online over Zoom. So as well as seeing my clients one-to-one, I run exercise classes along with other physios that we do online so that people can join in from home and access some physiotherapy as well as advice and support for what exercise they should be doing.
Amazing, yeah. And I remember we first, or I myself and Helena first saw you at the MS Trust conference, where you were presenting and you were showing us lots of exercises, and you were just really engaging and really inspiring and motivated. So we were like, oh, we must come and talk to Laura, because that was like, just the way that you presented was great, we thought.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, one of our big aims with Neuro Heroes is to keep things really engaging and varied, bring in a real playful side to it, so people who are feeling bored or quite sort of unmotivated have got that boost of energy. So yeah, all our physios are pretty dynamic and energizing. That's the aim.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And today we're talking about using mobility aids, maybe starting to use mobility aids, and exploring that whole aspect of MS. So Laura, you've obviously got lots of experience in this area. When do you think people should start using mobility aids in their journey?
Yeah, good question. And I think with this, there is absolutely no hard and fast rules. There's no right or wrong answer. But I'd say, firstly, anyone having difficulty with mobility, it's probably always worth having an assessment with a physio, a neuro physio preferably. And they might have some really useful advice and strategies that can help improve your walking, first off. So I think it's always useful to have that in your mind, just be open to seeing someone who might be able to analyze your walking and talk about what's changed with it and what might help you. I think it's always useful to think about what you want to achieve with your walking. So do you want to walk faster? Do you want to walk further? Do you want your walking to look different or feel more stable? And that might change over time. It might be different at different times of day even. But actually, if a mobility aid helps you do one of those things, move a little bit faster or feel a bit more steady, then I think it's worth considering. And actually, if you're having a hard time, don't suffer in silence, because there are lots of options in this area, and you might not know about all the options that are available to you. So seeing a professional before using an aid might really help you explore what sorts of things are available and that could be helpful to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important, isn't it, to get that expert advice, isn't it? And it's sort of specifically from those experts, from those health professionals. Is there any help that you can get when you're just starting out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think often people might buy a stick or get crutches off their own back without seeing anyone, if and when they feel the need, and that's absolutely fine. But a health professional can really help in those situations, partly because they can assess what is the right thing for you at that time. So checking it's the most suitable device, like someone might buy themselves a stick, but actually a crutch might be better for them because it has that arm holder and might help them feel a little bit more stable, whereas a stick might be quite wobbly in their hand. So you can get advice and information on what will be the best thing for you, and actually then adjusting that thing specifically to you. So getting a stick or crutches at the right height, or making sure that a wheelchair has got the right type of cushion for you, making sure a splint fits your ankle in the right way. Those sorts of things are all really important to make it comfortable and for the thing to work best for you. And I think most physios or therapy centres will have lots of things you can try. So having a go is sometimes good because you can think what feels most stable. Sometimes I might take videos of people using different devices, and we can look and analyse together what looks most stable or looks like it's helping them the most. So you can try and compare things, which is also useful to lots of people. Another thing to remember is the right accessories can make a really big difference. So I've just changed the feet on a client's walking poles so that she can get more grip when she's walking outdoors in the countryside. So little things like that can make a big difference to someone's stability. So it's partly kind of the setup and getting the right thing in the first place. And then when you've got that advice, using those things well can make a big difference. So technique matters. Not with everything, but getting practical support on how to use some things in more complex situations can be really useful. So if you think about using crutches, it might change if you're walking up a slope or downstairs, stairs with a rail versus without a rail, those sorts of things. So you can really learn the best way of doing things to keep you safe. So I think that's really useful when you first set out with something. And on the same card, like, seeing a health professional is really useful at the beginning, but I would always recommend seeing someone for a review. After a year or two, chances are something might have, the bottom of a walking stick might have worn out. I'm sure there's a lot of worn out ferrules, we call them, on the bottom of walking sticks, and worn out wheelchair tires that actually, if we replace those, it helps people move faster and more efficiently. So getting those things looked at too can make things a little bit safer and work better as well.
It's really interesting, and what you were saying there about just changing, the bottom of a crutch or a stick so it can be used more efficiently, or a wheel on a wheelchair. And I was just thinking, actually, just the amount of independence that can bring for someone who, as you say, wanted to explore the countryside but was struggling, but now they can actually access something that they really, really enjoy and they love and they're passionate about. So yeah, it can be so life-changing, I guess, can't it?
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
Obviously though, Laura, this does come with a real, unfortunately, in the wider community, can have a bit of a stigma around people using mobility aids, and there's obviously a huge psychological aspect to this. So we've heard from a few people who have sort of said, they don't want to start using a mobility aid because they'll feel like MS has defeated them, or that they're giving in, or something like this. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that side of things. Is there any way that we can change the mindset on that?
Yeah, I think, let's face it, it's totally understandable that people feel like that. It takes time to adjust to sort of a new normal for people, and sometimes things change really slowly, and it's easier to adjust over time. But sometimes for some people, we've got to remember things change quite quickly, and that can be a real shock to the system. But acceptance plays a really big part in allowing people to do what they want to do. And as you said just then, those things that you enjoy and that bring you lots of benefits are so important. And the getting out and about, doing social things, doing work tasks, those things bring a huge mental health benefit, as well as allowing you to do things. And I think accepting the way you're moving allows you to be more fulfilled. So let me expand on that a little bit. Anyone that's done any fatigue management, like a course or any education, will probably have discussed the concept of having this battery of energy, and the battery is full at the beginning of the day, and the battery gradually gets used as you do different activities. When you rest, the battery gets topped up a little bit. And I'm sure people listening will understand that sometimes that battery gets used much quicker with some tasks than others. So for some people, having a shower might really deplete their energy. They need a long rest afterwards to help the energy. For others, it might be a really long walk, or doing exercise depletes the battery. But we talk about this from a perspective of pacing and trying to pace your energy usage throughout the day. And what we know with MS is that using the whole battery early in the day, or at one time early in the day, makes it really hard to then replenish these supplies of energy. And often people do a lot better using a bit of energy, having a rest, using a bit of energy, having a rest, and through the day doing some movements and tasks, but then giving themselves some time to recoup the energy. That in itself takes a little bit of getting used to, but generally over the whole day, people find that they can achieve more because they're not getting to that real point of exhaustion and real fatigue from doing too much and needing then a 2-hour rest and lying down or going to bed, for example. So in my mind, I try and explain to people, if a stick or a wheelchair or a splint on your foot allows you to top up that battery and be more efficient with your energy, I'd say that's a really good thing. So it's an opportunity to make your walking or getting around less effortful. And that in itself might then allow you to enjoy what you're out to do more. So that actually might even allow you to do things you wouldn't even consider before. So being able to go into the office for that work meeting can be really empowering and really help your career. Or going out for a social thing where you've not used all your energy getting there because you've used your wheelchair to get there can help you really actually enjoy the company of your friends and do what you're out to do, than if you'd really used every single ounce of energy because you wanted to be on your feet to get there. So all of those things really have a big benefit on mental health, like I said before as well. I just think it's so important that we do things we enjoy for all of us, and it helps us get things out of life. And if we can think of these aids more as an enabler than a defeater, then I think that would help people judge themselves less and judge other people less as well. And I think if we can really see these things as giving us opportunities rather than feeling defeated, then it might allow people to do more and enjoy more as well.
That's amazing. I really liked what you said there about being an enabler, and you know, not just completely changing your perspective about how you look at these things. Yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, I love that, as when you're saying, you know, actually, you know, you're going to have potentially more quality time, you know, when you're out and about, if you can help you to access some of the things that you love, or just actually when you are there having more energy to be able to enjoy those things.
Yeah, and I think an important thing off your point, Nick, is that, like, you might, having a walking aid isn't set in stone. You might use one aid to get to where you want to, and then something different when you're there. And we can be flexible with this, and that's part of seeing a physio or an occupational therapist, is they can really help you work out how you're going to achieve what you want to achieve and how you want to do it. Because some people might say, I don't want to use a wheelchair when I'm at work or when I'm out. And that's great. That's part of our job, is to work out how we can enable people to do what they want to do and how they want to do it. But it might be that you could use that wheelchair to get into the office, and then you park it up and you use your splints while you're there. And I think it's a work in progress. It's flexible, and you know, doing things the way you want to do them is really, really important. But getting advice from a professional, you might work out ways that you haven't thought of already to use those things to your advantage, I suppose.
Yeah, amazing. And Laura, in terms of someone who's coming to see you, or another health professional who's actually really, really struggling with the mental side of using a mobility aid, is there anything that you would recommend, any services or resources that helps with sort of the psychological side of starting to use a mobility aid?
Yeah, sure. So I think some people might be referred to a psychologist in this kind of situation if they were really struggling with the sort of acceptance and coming to terms with things. And we know that coming to terms with having MS in the first place is quite hard for a lot of people. So seeking support is useful, and you can be referred to various services through your neurologist or your MS nurse. Sometimes we refer people to CBT, which stands for cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's more of a talking therapy service, and that can be really useful because it helps to change the way people perceive things or the way they're looking at certain situations. So in this particular example, that can be really useful. seeing an aid as an enabler, for example. So something like that can be useful to people. I would also recommend talking with the MS community. So there's a lot of charities and groups and support services where you could maybe ask people what aids they've been offered and what opportunities that's offered them and what ability they might have gained from it. And sometimes talking to other people about what they've used and their experiences can be useful as well. And it's great that we've got people now in the public eye. For example, Selma Blair. So really nice to have somebody that we're seeing in the public eye with MS who is using her stick out and about and in photo shoots. And for some people, reading an interview with someone like her might be quite empowering and reassuring and give people confidence. So I think there are resources out there, and opening yourself to talking about it with other people might be really useful.
Yeah, we had a story recently, a personal story from someone in the community who said, if Selma Blair can rock a stylish stick, so can I. And I thought that was just great. That actually,
great.
that message is out there, and there's celebrities being more inclusive, and it's really important, isn't it, to shift that mindset?
Yeah, and hey, you can get jazzy sticks, you can get jazzy splints. I've had patients and clients come in with sticks with fairy lights wrapped around them, wheelchairs with glowing lights on. You can rock this stuff. It doesn't have to be boring or look bad. I've seen some very creative walking aids in my time.
Our other interview for this podcast is with a lady called Hayley, who's on social media as My Sassability, and she's all about accessorizing her mobility aids and being proud about them and making herself seen. So it's great to hear that also other people in the community are doing that too.
Definitely.
Laura, thank you so much. Just before we let you go, do you have any top tips for anyone who's just starting out using mobility aids, not quite sure about it, to help them sort of get to that level where you were talking about of acceptance and enabling and everything?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that there are options. There are always options. And if somebody gives you something to try or says you should use this, you don't have to use that, nor do you have to use it forever. But there might be some other options that do the same job, that look different or feel different. So it's always worth exploring your options. And I do think seeing a health professional will give you a really good broad outlook on those sorts of things. So quite often people don't know about splints that you can wear under your trousers or inside your shoes, that no one else would ever know you're wearing, but can really help you lift up your foot if you've got foot drop, for example. Similarly, functional electrical stimulation, something that sounds a little bit daunting to some people because it also helps people lift their foot or sometimes bend their hip by giving some electrical stimulus to a muscle. And learning more about that, or even having a trial, which often you can just do in a physio assessment, might open your eyes to what it really does and what it feels like. So be open to suggestions and try and give things a go. I also think I've got one other analogy that I think people can remember, and I think you could think of some walking aids like having an umbrella in your bag. So on a good day that's nice and sunny, when you're feeling good, your MS is feeling stable and under control, you're probably pretty confident that you don't need your umbrella, but actually you might keep it in your bag anyway. But we know there's times when it's torrentially raining that's going to be really useful. And it's not that hard to have it with you all the time, but there are times when it's going to be really, really useful. Maybe when you're really tired or you've done lots over the weekend and it's Monday morning and you've still got plans you need to get to. And then there's times when it's drizzling, right? And you could go either way, but actually you've got to weigh up the pros and cons. And sometimes you might want to use the aid even when you don't really, really need it, but it just allows you to not be working quite so hard and using so much of your energy. So I think that's a nice way of thinking about something, is you don't have to use it all the time. But I see loads of people who have a fold-up stick who do have it in their bag. And if they suddenly are really tired, or their walking gets worse because maybe it's hot, or because their tube is delayed and they've been out longer than they intended to, then you've got that backup plan. So I think keeping an open mind is really important. And you might not need the same thing forever. Some people might have some rehab and they might then go on to use something less supportive. Some people might need something more supportive in the future, but actually some people, when they do get an aid, feel quite relieved because it makes life easier. So being open to trying things, I think, is the most important thing here. And my job is to help people effectively achieve what they want to do. And sometimes doing that independently without any aids or help isn't the best thing for that person, because it might be exhausting, might be painful, it might be very limited. And actually using an aid can sometimes open up other options in what people can achieve, because it does open up opportunities. And so trying to think of something as an opportunity, and as we said earlier, an enabler, can be a really positive way of changing the mindset.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. I love that the analogy and the positivity, and seeing those things as opportunities, those mobility aids as enablers and opportunities that allow you to enjoy life, enjoy the things that you want to, and be empowered. So thank you. That's brilliant. We've actually got a few things coming up with yourself, Laura, in terms of some more content that people might see from us at the MS Trust. But where's the best place to find you and find Neuro Heroes online? And have you got anything that you'd like to sort of tell people about?
Yes, so you can come to the Neuro Heroes website, neuroheroes.co.uk, and everything you need to know is on there. So that tells you a little bit about us and about our classes. But you'll also be able to find there, under the classes tab, an MS assessment form. So anyone that wants to come to our classes, if they fill out the assessment form first, we can then tell them which classes are best suited to their needs, and we'll come back to you saying, please come along to a free trial. So first class is always free, just so you can have a look and sense of what we're all about and see whether it's for you. And we're also on social media, so Twitter and Instagram. Got a few little videos on Instagram of exercises people might like to try, hints and tips, that kind of thing. So you can find us online.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. Really appreciate talking to you today. So useful, and yeah, have a lovely day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Nick. Bye.
All right.
And we're back. I thought both interviews were so interesting to listen to. I mean, I feel like a person who doesn't need to use mobility aids myself yet. It's really hard to sort of, know what the future holds, but I can feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about what I think people should do or should think, who need to use them, because I can understand that it can be so stressful. We asked quite recently on our Facebook group what were things that people were worried about for the future with MS, and I would say like about 50% of people were talking about future mobility problems. So it's clearly something that's playing on a lot of people's mind. So I feel like it's really important to talk about these things. And another thing that I really feel for what Hayley was so right about is the importance of having more people being seen and being out and about using things like walking sticks and crutches and wheelchairs, whatever aid you need to, as it would really make other people who's thinking about using them and feel a bit uncomfortable with the idea of using them feel braver, because it's more normalized, you see it out and about. But also, the more people are being seen using them, we will force sort of society to be a bit more responsible and make the world a little bit more accessible. So I think Hayley is so right when she's saying about, like, if we're not seen, we're not heard. So I think it's a really important kind of point to push, but I also understand that it's quite hard when you're trying to get to grips with having to start maybe using a stick, and you're worried that people are going to start looking at you, to have that responsibility on your shoulder as well, to be like that person who is, you know, out trailblazing and doing things. So it's a lot to think about, but I feel like there have been some great comments from both guests.
Yeah, definitely. And I think society has definitely come on a long way, hasn't it, in terms of things being accessible and there being awareness. But I just feel like there's still such a way to go, isn't there? There's still, for lots of people, they still feel like people are staring at them, or like they're not included in so many spaces, in so many different environments in our society. And so I think you're right, Helena, and yeah, it's really good to hear from Hayley, where she was like, you know, accessorize your mobility aids. You know, everyone should be paying attention to this, so that, you know, places do start taking notice, and places do start putting accessibility at the forefront. Because, you know, you only have to walk down the road to find, you know, a stretch of path that's completely inaccessible because it's narrow. There's bins all over the road, you know, and it's tough, isn't it? That's going to be part of what people worry about, is actually being able to get out and about and to do the things that they enjoy doing.
Yeah, that's it. And there's a lot of things that as able-bodied people you don't really think about. I know, for instance, when I had my child in a buggy and I was having to push the buggy around, the amount of things, like you said, bins or cars being parked up on the all these things that you don't think about when you can physically walk around them. They might be a little bit of annoyance, but when you actually have to take a buggy or a wheelchair out into the street, it becomes really dangerous. And it's all those things that we don't think about, that people have to think about before, when they go out to plan their day. So it's so important.
Yeah, definitely. And just having that independence, you know, feeling like you still can maintain that a level of independence and still be able to, you know, pop to the shops or go to work if you work, and just being able to take control over the things that you want to, you know, and that must be part of that psychological journey that people are on.
Yeah, and I think it's so hard when a lot of things are already negative to start with. Like, I mean, like you said, things have changed now. But I remember when I was newly diagnosed, there was a lot of that phrase, "Oh, you might not end up in a wheelchair," or, you know, and it's just that phrase itself. It's so, I mean, I asked Hayley, what does it feel like when people are saying that? Because it's so negative. And, you know, we'll have the stats about, oh, so many people are in a wheelchair and so many people never have to use a wheelchair. And I always felt like that must be like, if you are in that percentage that have to use a wheelchair, do you feel like you sort of failed then, or is it your fault? You know, so I think it's really, really important that we kind of reframe that language and the way that we use language around mobility aids. I love the use of sort of enabler in this case instead, because it is an aid that helps you get out and about and get on with your life. It's not the wheelchair that's making you disabled. That's actually enabling you to do things. And it's easy for me again to say such a thing when I don't need to use one, but I feel like Hayley's positivity there of like kind of refusing to stay at home and wanting to go out and do things, it was just very inspirational in that way, because I feel like it's a hard journey for people to take. So hopefully listening to this will sort of give you some ideas on what you can do.
Yeah, definitely. And Laura also was talking about, you know, seeing it as an opportunity, you know, seeing it as an opportunity. What can you now do now that you're using that mobility aid? And it's just that, yeah, it's a real shift, isn't it, in the perspective that probably needs to happen in the wider community as well, and not just in the MS community and in communities of people who use mobility aids.
Yeah. And I think, you know, what me and Hayley discussed there a little bit about, if you're used to seeing them, like she was talking about her daughter and what she talks about, I mentioned my granddad had a wheelchair, so we always sort of grew up with that in the family. And for me, it was cool. He was on wheels, we could go out and we could do things, and he was always out and about doing things with me when I was little. So it was, wheelchairs were sort of not a scary thing for me growing up, and I feel like, again, the more we see them, have them on TV, have them in shows, and society is getting better, but like we've said several times now, there is still a long way to go.
Absolutely. And yeah, as you said, Helena, we threw out to our group on Facebook as well, and we had a bit of a shout out, and we asked them, didn't we? We said, who's using mobility aids? What would you say to people who are worried about using them? And we did have lots and lots of really interesting comments from people. So one person said, nobody's worrying or looking at you. You have more to lose by injuring yourself by not using mobility aids. You are the priority. I think that's so important, isn't it? You are the priority. Go for it and embrace it. See it as a positive and in your best interests.
And another person said, I felt the same. I was very self-conscious with the stick, but found people very kind and had to remind myself that I never looked at people with sticks or wheelchair users any differently before. So no one would be looking at you. It took me a while, but the aids are there to help you. Enablers is a good way to think of it, and good luck. I also like this one. Again, kind of talking about enablers. So think of it as an enabler rather than a disability mobility aid. My relator, or wheelie, as I prefer to call it, enables me to get out and about. Without it, I would stay at home. I use the bus and I could not stand and wait for one without it.
Amazing. And this one was actually from one of our volunteer moderators, Caroline. Thank you, Caroline, for everything that you do in the group. Honestly, you are amazing.
We love you.
Yeah, Caroline said, the thought of using one is scary, but for me, it's a game changer. People are more patient of my slow walking and wobbling. I get more space in crowded streets, and I also get seats on public transport. So go for it. My worries were just in my head and none have been true yet. And finally, we had one more as well that we thought was great. So this person said, think of your walking aid enabling you to do the things that you like to do safely, therefore keeping your independence. My own background was teaching therapy. You need to look at how you can adapt to enable yourself to carry on. I decorated my stick with my granddaughter, who she was accessorizing the stick there. And we, as Hayley was saying, and we had so much fun painting it. I have an outdoor walker with seats, and sometimes she sits on it while I'm pushing. We have joy together during those times. Without my walking aids, I would not be able to do the things that I enjoy. And boy, would I be miserable about it. So go for it.
I think we'll link to all of that, to the group and that conversation, actually, because I think there was, last time I checked, there was over 60 comments on this, and they're all really interesting and very much on the same level as these ones that we've read. But if you want to learn more about walking aids, I mentioned at the start that we have another podcast episode about the topic. And in part 2 of this, because it was a mobility 1 and 2, we spoke to physiotherapist Jodie Barber, and she went through a lot of things, like how to best use a mobility aid, how you go about getting them, and other important things to think about. So be sure to check that one out. As I said a few times, the links are in the description of the show notes.
Yeah, and if you do want to ask any questions about MS, of course, we're always around. We're here for you. Our helpline is available from Mondays to Fridays, apart from UK bank holidays. So that's from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Outside of these hours, you can, of course, drop us a message or leave us an answer phone message, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. The number for the helpline is 0800 032 3839, Or if you didn't want to go for the phone option, of course, you can drop us an email as well with questions about MS. So that's ask@mstrust.org.uk.
And you can come and find us on social media. We are on Facebook. We've mentioned that we also have a Facebook group, but we also have a Facebook page that you should give a follow. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can find this podcast on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music, and also on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe, like they like to say, and drop us a comment. Maybe have you got some tips about how to get your head around using mobility aids? Please let us know in the comments. And I want to say again a big thank you to both Hayley and Laura for being such great guests. And let us know what you thought of this episode. And as we always finish with, a big thank you to Anne Chapman Audio for the music of this podcast. And we'll see you in a few weeks' time. Bye.
Bye.